Assessing the risk of flooding and the costs associated with prevention is an issue that's rising up the agenda of governments around the world. That climate change is raising sea levels is no longer in dispute. What is still under consideration is how to get the best value from the increasing investment going into flood alleviation schemes. In 2001, the UK's Environment Agency decided to take a new approach to managing the problem in two areas of the UK, the Norfolk Broads and Pevensey Bay on the south coast. The agency financed flood alleviation schemes through public-private partnerships in order to inject a longer-term perspective. Halfway through its 20-year term in the Norfolk Broads, Broadland Environmental Services Ltd, Bessel, the joint venture company formed between BAM Nuttall and Halcrow, outlines how taking a longer-term approach to flood alleviation is enabling it to deliver greater value than the sum of the parts of its contract.
In the Broads here, managing flood risk has always been challenging. We've got long lengths of embankment sitting on very poor ground conditions in an area with the status of a national park. Now, what we need to do, because we get very limited resources in terms of flood risk management, is to maximise the return that we get for whatever investment we put in. And the type of things that the partnership with the private sector has brought to this project in terms of long-term planning, efficiency savings, value engineering and a degree of innovation, I think has been a really successful outcome from the Environment Agency's perspective.
Before this project, we used to do similar work, but on a firefighting basis, really. We used to wait for defences to reach the state where they were about to fail, and then we'd go in and do almost an emergency project for a couple hundred metres of piling here and there. And because we've left it too late, we had a limited range of options that we could do. Now, because of the long-term nature of this project, we're able to plan in advance. We can consider solutions that take several seasons to build, which we couldn't do before, which means we get better solutions done at the right time in a far more sustainable way.
Normally in flood risk management, projects are heavy on capital with low maintenance, yeah? But because we're there for 20 years, we're able to do things which are relatively low capital cost, but have maintenance input that means the total whole life cost is less. This is a really significant advantage. For example, a flood embankment being created, we would normally as engineers, to be safe, we might raise it 600 millimetres higher than the flood defence level. And that partly allows for settlement we would go away and leave it. But that 600 millimetres would be a factor of safety, if you like, on the overall size of the embankment. However, if you're there for 5, 10, and in fact we're there for 20 years, we can put in an embankment that's a lot lower because we know we're there. We can monitor that embankment, so we only put it in 150 millimetres higher than it need be. And remember, we're talking about kilometres and kilometres of embankment. By doing that, we then don't have to do work that is unnecessary. If and when, as we're doing our monitoring, we find a few places where there is a bit of settlement, we can just go in the next season and top it up. So we're ensuring that we don't do unnecessary work that otherwise wouldn't actually create any benefit.
We're just starting works here building a new setback bank. The bank we're standing on at the moment is the old flood bank, which is protected by a sheet piled frontage. That sheet piling is deteriorating rapidly and obviously it would be very expensive to redo that. So the idea here is to move the flood bank inland, create a new bank, remove the sheet piling and then regrade this area in here to form a new reeded rond. As you can see, the lads are what we call haymaking the material from the soap dike across onto the folding and then onto the flood bank itself. This is the second layer they're putting in, and that dozer is compacting that material down.
The whole team is co-located in Norwich. That's the client, the contractor and our staff who work on the design and the preparations for the project as a whole. The big benefit that gives us is that they are committed and dedicated to that one project. So they're not pulled off on other tasks and other areas. The big benefit to the client and to the project itself is it means we deliver a lean project so it's highly efficient.
Regarding emergency response, this is written into the contract, so BESL are the frontline responders. The contract says that in emergency situations they act under direction from the agency, and in a more extreme event that may be the case. But in practice, because they've taken on ownership of the defences in the Broads, they know them intimately, they've surveyed every inch of it and they've modelled it with the hydraulic model. They actually know where the problem areas are, and if we know we've got an event coming, they can anticipate this and actually be on site to talk to people where problems are going to occur and react, almost preempt the problems really.
I spent probably from about 3 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon at Silver Control, dealing with members of the public phoning in when we had a very, very high river level alert. And what was, I think, quite useful was because I'd spent a lot of time in the maintenance section, I knew a lot of the people personally, so they'd phone up and it'd be, "Oh, hello Ellie, how you doing? Well, I'm sitting here in my car and I've got my goldfish and I've got my bird. Do I need to evacuate?" And it's kind of like, no, I think everything will be fine for the time being. But that's the kind of relationship we have with our landowners and we have with our stakeholders, because we know the areas intimately.
We're very closely aligned both corporately, financially and of course operationally on the project. Means that we can innovate in everything that we do. I think we can bring an extraordinary amount of added value to our client, who under this arrangement, because this is a service type agreement in the long term, can stand back to a great extent on what we have been given to do and allow us the freedom to bring all of our experiences between ourselves and Halcrow to bear on some very important decisions that have to be made about the long term. Security of turnover, however big or small that turnover is, allows us to plan our business for the long term ahead. We've been on this project, as you know, for some 10 years now, and that's allowed us to develop our people, to get financial security for a piece of our business in terms of volume turnover. It's helped us with our supply chain because they have long-term business as well, and our operatives. So in terms of development of people and development of our relationship with an important client, it's clearly very, very good for us.
The continuity of staff is a great help to safety. That's a real plus point. Having the same staff all the time makes safety a lot greater and a lot easier for all of us.
One of the big improvements that we've seen is better public access where the bank improvements have taken place. This path that I'm standing on is a new access. It provides easy walks for local people and visitors and spectacular views over some of these beautiful wetlands.
The advantage of a 20-year plan is that it is far enough ahead to actually project and plan to achieve best value, and we've started to look at 10-15 years ahead rather than the short 2 or 3 years ahead.
We've dealt with an awful lot of protected species on this project, and we've actually developed methods on this project because we're working in very big schemes, 5-10 kilometres at a time. Now we've developed methods on here which is the vegetation cutting, water drawdown, which can be applied for the whole of the UK. So those savings which we've developed through using these methods can be passed on to other schemes.
What I've found incredibly important is the sort of long-term presence of BESL and the ability to be able to build really, really good working relationships with some of the key people within the project, and certainly made delivery of enhancements much more efficient than we could ever hope to achieve, bringing in contractors on an ad hoc basis.
Using this model on other projects would be very, very beneficial. But they have to be the right projects under the right circumstances. It's the overall service that we can provide to the agency, which means that they can, to some extent, step back from their normal activity and allow us to get on with something that we can bring to add value to the whole of the service range that they're requiring from us.
For me, it's great. It's a 10-15 years continuity of work. I get to be at home every night and I get to see my daughter grow up, and that's the bottom line of it.
The Broadland Flood Alleviation Project has demonstrated that the use of long-term contracts enables benefits to be obtained which more standard procurement methods cannot provide. Managed properly, the long-term approach offers a strategic level of control and opportunity which benefits the public purse, the environment and the well-being of all involved.